You're watching the Chucktown Wind Report Extended Weekend Outlook from Friday, September the 25th through Monday, September the 28th. Okay, last night we had a confirmed tornado on the ground. Came in off the ocean as a surface circulation, possibly as a water spout, and the rotation continued inland and developed into a tornado. Now, the magnitude of the tornado that was recorded has been placed at an EF0. However, the National Weather Service assessment team will be going out today to take a better look at the area and decide whether or not to lift that magnitude. There was some significant tree damage, power lines, some home damage, and some pictures starting to surface of the damage in the area going from Johns Island, carving through West Ashley towards Magnolia and Middleton Place, Magnolia Gardens and Middleton Place. So if we look at the track of the warning here starts on Johns Island, and I'm going to go ahead and just sort of take some of the radar reflectivity out of it and get a better look at where the first spotting was here on Johns Island. And you can see the track of this tornado heads to the northwest, jogs back over to the northeast, back over to the northwest. So the main track of this tornado looks like it was heading to the northwest with a little bit of a jog, and then back over, and then heading to the north along a thunderstorm line that developed late last night. So once again, tornado warnings were issued last night. A tornado did make it to the ground. For right now, they're calling it an EF0, and it lasted from 12:45 a.m. to roughly 12:59 a.m. So we'll be seeing more of that today in our Twitter feeds and some of the social media outlets. So be on the lookout. And always with thunderstorming and these low pressure systems that are along the coastline, we have to continue to watch for that moisture to be streaming in from the ocean to cause some of these surface circulations and water spouting with tornadoes, especially with warm front activity at night times. Okay, so let's take a look at the radar over the area. For now, it looks like most of the rain banding has made it to our east and to our north, and it's continuing to be pumped in off the ocean from low pressure that was off the ocean and is now making its way inland just west of Charleston. Okay, so if we look at the datascope for Folly Beach, datascope with weather flow, here's a little bit of a spike. That rotation caught some of that right around 12:30 as it moved ashore. So you can see a little bit of a history here where the averages actually came up to the upper 20 knot ranges, and the gust line went up to about 32. The Johns Island weather station, which would be even a little bit closer, just does not show too much on the data line there. It's a, let's see here, I think that's Charleston Executive Airport, so that'd be a private weather station. However, ours did capture some of the higher winds late at night, 12:30 a.m., and that is right in line with something that would have gone ashore near the area, probably just to the south, right through the Stono Cut. And I think that's probably where it originated, was from the Stono Cut. As it moved on to Johns Island, we had some surface rotation as that land friction entered into the picture, and then you get a tornado. So as far as the winds go for right now, wrapping around the low pressure system, we're seeing a southwesterly flow coming around it, and we're down near 10 knots at this point. It was a little bit higher earlier, starting to fade as the low pressure exits to the west, and then we'll continue to see these winds start to fall even further down. And I'm going to go ahead and do the model runs for all the computer models that we have available, and you see mostly the high resolution models, the NAM 5K and the HER 3K, are all showing southerly flows for this all the way through this afternoon. Now, some of the models are hinting on an easterly flow, and that was kind of the idea as high pressure was wedging down from the north. But the low pressure being so close to the vicinity, probably will not see that, and our wind field is going to be more affected by the low pressure than it will the high pressure. So we'll see the southerly flow probably continue to drop down below 10 knots and stay rather southerly and variable for most of the day, with rains in and out, as we do continue to see a lot of clouding and rain banding sort of make it into the coastline. Okay. I do want to look at the air temperatures now. Our air temperatures, the models are showing below 80 degrees, so our highest resolution model actually shows down near 70 by 11 o'clock in the morning, and then slowly coming up later in the afternoon. So we'll be staying on the comfortable side today, even in and out of the rains. And look at the pressure. Pressure looks to rise, so that could be some of that high pressure making its way down into the area, with the low pressure exiting to the west. the high pressure will rise. So that's the wind forecast and air temperature forecast for the beaches. So that, if we look at the harbor, we're seeing 9 knots from the southwest right now, and once again, it was pretty far away from that spike around 12 a.m., so we didn't really get to see very much except for some thunderstorm activity that caused the winds to come up. And the available models for the Charleston Harbor, they're not going to differ too much from the beach. We'll probably see the continued southerly flow at or below 10 knots. Wait for those to load. That one's taking just a minute. Here we go. Okay, so that's correct on that. So we do see the NAM 5K and the HER 3K keep the southerly flow at or below 10 knots, even in the Charleston Harbor, so we probably will not see very much funneling. Now, these winds could become gusty at times. We may see a few spikes here and there if we do get thunderstorming activity along the coastline. So if we look at our water vapor loop, we have an upper level low over Georgia that we talked about on our last forecast that was going to develop from a long wave trough, and it has developed, and it is going to be sliding to the north slowly over time. But for right now, we see water vapor imagery. We still see some of this moisture coming up from the south wrapping around this low pressure. The bulk of the convective activity has moved to our north and is continuing from the east and around to the north of Charleston. So we'll have to keep watch of some of this banding coming up from the south for the day. Now, we do have some dry air wrapping up around this upper level low, and you can see it clearly on the infrared loop for the southeast region. And here's the cloud tops and some of the convective activity just east and north of Charleston. And here we have this very distinct line of dry air that looks to be trying to make its way up the coastline. I don't think it's going to quite make it there today unless this low jogs a little bit more east. It does not look very likely, so we're going to keep the clouding in the forecast. We'll keep the winds below 10 knots today. As we get into tomorrow, this low pressure is going to be a stickler. It looks like it's not going to move very much. It's going to hug right along the coastline, right along the eastern edge of that upper level low, and it may get a nudge to the north and maybe even out to the east. And the idea here is that the low is not going to move, and it's going to slowly fizzle out as it gets some of that dry air pulled into it from that upper level low to the west. And will slowly fizzle out over time, but before it does that, it's probably going to bring quite a bit more rain, maybe not as much as yesterday, but on and off, a couple more inches of rain and in and out winds. So I'm not really expecting very much. Tomorrow we look at our model guidance for winds, and we see this northerly flow starting to make it down from the high pressure. However, if we do have another area of low pressure to develop near Charleston or off the shore, these models will switch up immediately. So we can't rule that out just yet. We can say for a general forecast tomorrow, we can go along with an east-northeast or an easterly flow and keep it modest right between 9 to 13 knots. And then with potential for higher, as the higher resolution model is picking up a little something extra in the afternoon with a tighter gradient. So we'll have to monitor that. We're going to have to take this weekend day to day with this tricky low pressure system, because unless this high pressure gets reinforcement to the north, we may not see this east-northeast flow happen at all. It may become more variable, just like it is for right now with a southerly field, and then it could go easterly later. So as we get into Sunday, the models have a little bit more disagreement as well, and some of the models are actually picking up on a low pressure developing. I can tell because the winds are switching up to the north, which tells me there's either a short wave of low pressure or a possible closed low that develops off the coastline once again to switch the wind field back to the north. There is one model that is picking up an easterly flow. It keeps the high pressure wedged down into the area. So once again, Sunday, we're looking at some variability here. I'm going to have to lean on agreement with the models on a northerly wind field developing with low pressure, because that has been happening time and time again for the last few days offshore and just along the coastline. So we'll keep Sunday as a northerly wind field, somewhere between 8 and 12 knots, probably have some jumpiness in it again. And as we get into Monday, we start to see that easterly flow make its way back in. I think the low pressures will be they will continue to be sheared off at the top from that upper level low, which will be nearby, and as that upper level low heads north, some of that shear environment will relax and that easterly wind flow will make it down. Okay, take a look at the earth.nullschool.net. Here is our surface low just inland and to the west of Charleston and Savannah. we see the surface low pulling in a southerly flow up the coastline. As we go higher up in the atmosphere, when we go up to 500 millibars, which is about 18,000 feet, and get an idea of where this mid to upper level low pressure is. And here we are, it's over Georgia. It's not very strong at the mid levels. It's probably going to be stronger at the upper levels, but we can see this southerly the southerly flow at the mid levels, and that is indicative of where we're seeing that rain and moisture come up from the south now around the surface low. As we go higher up into the atmosphere at 250 millibars, it's about 34,000 feet, 34 to 36,000 feet roughly. We can see a very strong gradient up high along the eastern side of this upper level low, and that's where things really accelerate. Now this upper level low should be making its way to the north over time and exiting the picture, which means the surface low pressure won't have as much shear going on at the mid to upper levels, and we may have some more favorable development for surface low pressures on or near the coastline. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying about the forecast for Sunday starting to become tricky with offshore low pressures redeveloping again. So in a nutshell, for our area, we're looking at tricky low pressure just inland, possibly spawning offshore low pressure as this mid to upper level low moves out of the area. Okay, over to the tropics. Atlantic 2-day outlook. Tropical depression Ida still spinning over here. It was a tropical storm yesterday. Now it's been downgraded to a tropical depression. Winds are at 35 miles an hour. We have this other area. It has a very low percentage over the next 5 days as it moves over the Bay of Campeche and to this area right here. So we have some strong upper level shear from a high pressure ridge over Texas, driving northerly winds down into this area. So whatever develops from here and makes its way across the Yucatan Peninsula into the Bay of Campeche or the South Gulf, then once it gets into this environment, it's going to become a little bit more hostile for development. So not expecting too much. It is expected to continue to drift to the north, and it could make it as a tropical depression to Louisiana, Alabama. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Let's take a look at Tropical Depression Ida again. Here's the forecast track to the north-northwest, eventually over to the west. We're looking at an area of somewhat hostile environment. It doesn't look like it's too much to tear it apart, yet it's not going to be favorable for development. So the National Hurricane Center is expecting this to remain as a tropical depression. It's very close to the intertropical convergence zone, so it's getting plenty of moisture feed over warmer waters. However, the mid to upper level environment is not the most ideal for development. But as this storm heads more to the west, we could see some redevelopment there. I don't think the storm has peaked out yet unless it gets torn apart by some of those upper level winds. Okay, I'm going to look at the region. Here's our low pressure over the southeast. And here's some more of this troughing coming up from the south, and there's plenty of moisture coming up, so we can expect more rains and showers today, possible thunder and lightning, and we'll have to watch for some of those surface rotations, especially in the morning time with water spouting, as the temperatures look to stay a little bit on the lower side to keep the water spout index a little bit high. So we'll have to keep watch on radar. Make sure to watch radar and make sure to keep in contact with the National Weather Service via their apps or to check their website. And that will do it for the Chucktown Wind Report. Thanks for watching.